morning again, and I'd like to welcome you very warmly to the South African Human Rights Commission, and to say that I, Commissioner Majola, and 4 other commissioners I knew. We started about three and a half months or so as the new commission. So we're still trying to find our feet here in the commission. We have 2 returning commissioners who are unfortunately not here, and then other 3 commissioners have got businesses, well, not in the business sense of the word, but they've got things to do in the Western Cape province. We come into the commission at a time when there are certain things that are attracting attention from bodies like the South African Human Rights Commission. You may have seen on television or otherwise in the media that we continue to have a problem with the issue of inequality, and as well as race in particular, in the sense that we are having a lot, especially on the social media, we are having a lot of issues that arise, especially between different races, with regard to the issue of race and racism. We have had a number of cases in which some people have pronounced racial epithets, slurs against other people, and we've had to deal with those. We have realized, for example, that the problem is becoming more visible now with the use of social media. We have, to that extent, in the 3 months that we have been here, thanks to our colleagues who have been working on the problem, but we've also even gone to the extent of having a hearing on the whole issue of racism and the social media. We also are in a part of the continent which happens to be much more developed than many parts of the continent, and as a result it attracts economic migrants, and we are experiencing continuous clashes between the nationals and those foreign nationals, and we've had to deal with the whole issue of xenophobic attacks, and to try and find a way of trying to deal with it as a commission. And I'm giving these examples because I'd like to zero in and say that, before I get there, I should say that, 2 things. One is that more than 20 years since independence, one would have expected that the whole issue of race and racism has disappeared. It kind of intriguing that we find that this still occupies the top slot among the complaints that we receive on the violation of human rights. Secondly, apartheid was based on the whole concept of inequality, on the concept that some people were better than others, that they were more superior than others, and this then manifested itself not only politically but in terms of the economic outlook, in the sense that white people tended to have better access to economic resources and therefore were richer, and black people were denied that access. And so when in 1994 South Africa became a democracy, it found a picture of a country that had very affluent people who happened to be largely white, and very poor people, the majority of whom were black. Now, when the liberation movements then were negotiating a future South Africa, one of the things that was done was to develop a very strong constitution, comparatively speaking. But it was also feared that that constitution would not drive itself in many respects, especially with regard, one, to reversing the injustices of the past, but also in dealing with the whole issue of the violation of human rights, because apartheid was based on the violation of human rights. The principles of apartheid meant that there should be inequality, there should be torture, there should be deprivation, everything. And the new government then had to shift completely to a situation where these rights needed to be protected, and they needed to be protected against a culture that was going to continue for some time, in the sense that this was not a situation where one side defeated the other. It was a situation where both sides negotiated, and so the good that this party came with and the bad that this party came with and so on had to be accommodated in the dispensation. The drafters of the Constitution then decided that there should be so-called Chapter 9 institutions. And the Human Rights Commission was then born in that context to try and deal with issues such as the ones that I have just mentioned. So our mandate is to try and protect human rights and to promote a culture of human rights. Our mandate is also to monitor that human rights are being observed or are not being violated, and also to provide redress where it is possible to do so. So what we have been dealing with since we came back is a combination of all this. We need to make the community aware of the existence of the mechanisms for the protection of their rights. They need to know that the Constitution says this and this and this about their rights, which is what my colleague here and her team are busy with, to promote advocacy about rights and respect and the responsibilities and so on. We also need to move in when there are violations and see what we can do. It has consisted largely in engaging with the violators, where, for example, there is the violations in terms of the racism and social media. We have got legislation that we use in order to bring cases in a simplified court procedure against the violators. They can be fined, they can be punished in different ways. We are looking at the possibility of upping that. We have power also to legislate cases in a court of law and obtain judgments that set the rule as to what conduct the state, the other role players have to play. With regard to law enforcement, for example, we have a situation where we see a lot of violations of the rights of people, the right to liberty, the right of security, of personal security, bodily security, in the sense that police beat up people, lock them up, and so on. We see a lot of people that get pre-trial detention for long periods of time. My colleague here is part of the monitoring team that monitors the violation of foreign nationals who are illegally in the country, that get arrested and get detained pending the verification of where they come from, so that they can be deported there, verification of their status and what have you. There are lots of violations in that regard. We also have the situation of local people who are arrested for the commission of crimes, and they get detained sometimes for very minor offenses, and they are not released on bail, or the bail conditions that they get are extremely difficult to meet, and then they do not have access to lawyers to apply because they don't have money. They don't have access to lawyers to apply for bail for release. In other words, they then get denied access to justice on the one hand. On the other hand, you have people who would like to do something because their rights are being violated, but because they do not have the resources to engage the necessary people who can help them to do that, you find that they do not have access to justice. I must say that among the challenges that we have is we do not have sufficient resources. It's a very big problem that we're having, that there is so much that needs to be done in terms of the education of people about their human rights, empowering them as to how they should deal with their human rights, protecting their rights when those rights are being violated. The country is so big, there's such a huge population. We have a government that is trying its best to deal with the problem, but in it there are elements that are just going on as if, there has never been any change. The police, for example, not to single them out, but the amounts of money that we pay out for transgressions of the law, the violations of rights of people by the police is staggering. It is money that you can use to build so many houses for the poor. It's money that you could build roads, to build schools, clinics, and what have you. I mean, 14, 19 billion rands a year is a huge amount of money, that we spend on the basis of the wrongful actions of the police. But we are trying the best we can. I don't want to take all the time. It's difficult to speak. I have to leave also at some stage.